Thanks for choosing to listen to this Late Night Linux Family podcast. We're only able to do this because of the people who support us. None of our shows are paywalled, but our Patreon supporters can get most episodes early and never hear any ads. Learn more at latenightlinux.com/support or support us by telling a friend or colleague about everything we do. Hello and welcome to episode 395 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 13th of July 2026. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Howdy.
Graham.
Vive la France.
And Will.
Hello.
That's a very good bet, Graham, and I suspect you are correct. And when people hear this, they will know for sure, probably, I think, if my maths are correct. There's not much news happening at the moment because it's summer, so I thought it might be interesting to ask you about your history of tech. And so I've asked you all to pick a piece of tech from early on that inspired where you are today. Now, I have done this on other shows before, Linux After Dark and stuff, but we've never done it on this show, so I thought it would be interesting. Graham, you are banned from using the word Amiga.
That's fair. Well, it's not fair, but I understand.
I have not one, but I have two examples. So the first example was setting up a firewall between a test lab and the main network without the ability for us to actually purchase, back in the early 2000s, what were very expensive firewall appliances. And I found IPCOP, which people may or may not know, and installed that. And that worked absolutely brilliantly. Did the job, was nice to interface with, you didn't have to learn crazy rules or anything like that, and it was fantastic. And then the second one was, we were doing tech support for a client, and they had an RMA process. So customers would have to send in their RMA that they'd filled out and fax it. Yes, I'm sure people will not know what a fax machine is, but yes, they had to fax it into our number, and people would then have to go up to the computer that ran the fax software, it was probably a TIFF, to be quite honest. A TIFF-F, I think, is what was the standard format for a fax, and then drop it into Adobe Distiller, and then upload it onto a share, and then go to their machine, and then get it off that share, and then deal with it with the client. It was an absolute nightmare, and I thought there has to be a better way to do that. So I learned about fax modems. We had a couple of old clunky external modems that I hooked up, got Hylafax running on it. It saved it down as a TIFF. I then said there has to be a way to turn that into a PDF. I found a way to do that. Then I created a TIFF automatically, and then I used Samba and uploaded it straight onto a share that people just grab from the machine. So they'd say, customer, send it here, got a TIFF, and then it all just showed up in the share, and then they were able to just stick it in as a simple RMA process. And it just showed the way of being able to bolt a whole bunch of stuff together with almost little to no understanding of the individual bits that well, but enough to sort of tie them all together, pipe things through each other. And yeah, it was remarkably simple for what it actually did, if you think about it. And it was just amazing. It's quite cool.
My one is somewhat older than that. Mine goes back to about 1984, and I was about 8 years old, and at school, where we had BBC microcomputers, the local amateur radio group came in with their BBC and a radio and an AX25 modem, which let you plug your computer into a radio, which you could then broadcast over UHF to other people in the local area, and then you could type messages, and the messages would appear on their screen, and you could access bulletin board systems. And this was absolutely mind-blowing to me at that age, that you could take this computer, which was something that lived on a trolley and was wheeled into your classroom once a week, that you could use this magic box to talk to other magic boxes without any wires. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And from that point onwards, I wanted to know exactly how it worked and what you could do with it. And that really led to a huge interest in BBSs and the internet generally. And I'm pretty certain is like the real driver, the motivation behind everything I've done since is connecting things together. And we have that with the internet, but we also have that with Linux, where you, as Phelim's describing, you take a piece of software that does one job and you chain it to another thing and you chain it to another thing. And before you know it, you've got this pipeline of bits that produce something that is much, much greater than their component parts. And that really just blew my mind. And I thought it was the most exciting and cool thing that I'd ever seen ever. And I still think it's very cool. And I was chatting to a friend of mine at work the other day who is also part of the UK Amateur Radio Society. And he was telling me that they are working on bringing packet radio back again for shits and giggles, but, re-implementing all of that technology in a Rust application that you can run on your PC and hook up to your radio and talk to other nerds in your local area.
I feel another Bofang find coming along later on in the year.
Well, I have talked about various machines and stuff before, various laptops and desktops on other shows, but I think for me, it was, believe it or not, and Phelim's toes are going to curl at this, cPanel and PHP MyAdmin.
Fuck off.
But not as someone who's installed these things, someone who used these things. So picture it, right? I am probably, early 20s, having made quite a late start to this whole computer stuff. Well, I mean, I had an Amiga when I was young and whatnot, but...
No mention.
No, I mentioned Amiga. I meant Amstrad anyway. I had an Amstrad and an Amiga, but then I was like all into like PlayStation and stuff like that. So I was very much not a computer person. But then I got a computer. I got eventually connected to the internet via dial-up. That was very much a case of, log on to the internet, go to the forum, open up all the threads I wanted to read, disconnect, read everything, compose all my replies, reconnect, send the replies, that sort of thing. But then eventually I thought, fuck this. I'm getting broadband in quotes, and I got my 1 megabit per second. And I could not believe how fast it was and the fact it was always connected. And so then it was like, well, what am I going to do with this internet connection? Well, I ended up getting into forums and talking to people. And that led me to think, well, how do I get my own forum? And that led me to cheap hosting that was cPanel based with PHP MyAdmin and all the rest of it.
Jesus Christ. Let's get all of them in a oneer.
Oh, yeah. And then I learned about FTP and how to set up a forum, a PHP BB forum, and when things couldn't work properly, like the advice was just change it to 777. Okay, that sounds like a great idea, so I did that. And like without knowing it, I was kind of using Linuxy stuff and getting into, web hosting and the kind of other side of things beyond the desktop, I suppose, and learning concepts about how this stuff worked. And granted, it was in this like really shitty way, but I'm still grateful that I went through that and learned about it. And, I had a bit of this web space. And so I gave my friend a bit of space to do whatever he wanted with. And then I thought it was my friend, but it was someone I knew online. And he just took the piss, updated a PHP shell, got all the passwords from my forum and just pwned everyone. And, lesson learned. Okay, right. Don't trust other people. And it was like really, really formative, that period of going online and not just being this like passive consumer of it. Like I was trying to take part in my own completely ignorant and fucking idiotic way. I was trying to be a part of it. And that, I think, really did shape where I've got to now.
I don't want to sound like a massive snob, though. I mean, things like that, it is great the way it gets people in. And the other one, what was it? Webmin, that was another one. They're trying to make easy a thing that is so hard. And I just think they would be better off just writing documentation for the other stuff. But anyway, it is good that it got you involved. Let's put it that way. It's a win.
Yeah, because like there's no way I could have possibly known about SSH and, all of the other shit and how to actually configure a web server and everything. I needed to have that like massively shit abstraction layer where it was just like, here is a server running PHP and everything, drop your files in, here's a GUI to configure your MySQL database and everything, and just get going. And I would not have got going without it.
I think we need to write a new project, MSAL, massively shit abstraction layer. That is perfect.
Well, maybe that's the new name for LLMs.
Was funny we recently talked about Mandrake because that had a huge impact having previously tried to get X running with Red Hat and failing, and then coming back a couple of years later and installing Linux with Mandrake, and then having everything working at my fingertips and looking really good as well on what must have been a very basic spec PC. The other thing that reminded me was, it reminded me of old BNC or coaxial network connectors, you remember? And actually getting computers to talk together using those things, especially with Linux. I've probably still got a couple of the cards somewhere.
Is this pre-TCP IP then?
No, although probably, I don't know whether we were using UDP over it. It certainly may be in the house.
Probably IPX.
Yes, yeah, that's right, IPX. And I'm like Will, the connectivity part of this has always just been pure magic. And I still feel an immense privilege in not having to pay dial-up rates for us just talking now, and thinking, am I allowed to stay on the phone this time talking for so long without asking my parents? So it's general stuff that still keeps me very excited about technology and Linux and all that stuff.
My mother was pretty anti-technology. I mean, still is. I think she just still doesn't even know what I fucking do for a job. But I had a dial up for a bit at home, and the problem was when it did its initial dial, it would obviously do all the standard handshake noises, but then after a while it would go silent because whatever way it was working at, I don't know, it just ran obviously above human hearing, and she'd always be picking up the phone going, "That phone's fucking broken again." I'd be like, "Oh really? Yeah, that's fucking hang up."
Let's do some modern day discoveries then. Although, Will, your one isn't that modern.
No, quite the opposite. Older than me, in fact. 55 years old, the 555 timer. And I was tempted to talk about this in the previous section because the first time I used a 555 was to make an LED flash on and off. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that story. But Big Clive has done an excellent 5 minutes and 55 second video about the 555 timer. And until recently, it had 555 comments, and then 60 people have come along and ruined it. But
bastards.
The 555 was like ubiquitous as perhaps one of the sort of first almost programmable devices, certainly that you could influence with other components and would output all manner of interesting things, or rather was bent to produce all manner of interesting things. It's a simple timer. It can output a square wave, and if you can filter that square wave, you can make it into a synthesizer. You can turn it into a radio. You can turn it into pretty much anything. It's like ubiquitous. It's still being used today, and it's where I would imagine most people's journey in microelectronics started. So happy birthday to the 555 timer.
Looking at the circuit diagram, it's really quite straightforward, isn't it?
The inner workings of it are pretty straightforward. There is quite a lot of supporting circuitry that goes with it to really make it respond at a set period. But yeah, I mean, it is pretty straightforward. And the documentation was very good, and the circuit diagrams and the reference circuits were very good. And I think, it enabled a lot of people to understand how to use it.
Phelim, Ovine or Ovine.net?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a history lesson this time, but I had a game that was near the end of the life of the BBC. I mean, I already had the BBC when it was probably end of life in the UK, and I ran it for a few years in Ireland where we were slightly harder to get the gear over here. So getting games was always tricky, but I remember there was one that came out called Cholo, and it was, the idea of the story was you were playing a computer game in a nuclear bunker. There'd been some sort of massive nuclear war, but it turns out that the game was meant to be training you to be the one who could control the robots who were actually outside, because they had no way to get the hatch of the thing open. At least that's as far as I can remember. I was in like single digit years old when I played this, I think. And I have often thought the game was really good. I was absolutely terrible at playing it. You had to go up and hack robots in various areas and get into different rooms and do a whole lot of stuff. And I didn't quite get half of it, I think. And I never finished it because I died of radiation poisoning and it blew the robot up or whatever it was. So I often wanted to sort of redeem myself and play it again. But, Warframe games, you couldn't get hold of it. Very hard to get, but these guys in Ovine Design, there's two guys here, and they're apparently currently making games for actual Commodore 64s. I don't know if that's that one that we saw get publicized, was it last year or the year before, where they're remaking it. Maybe they're getting involved in that type of stuff. But they redid a version of Cholo for Windows. It looks awesome. I think I might have played it once in the mid-2000s on my work PC. I downloaded it, and I have a copy of it, and it contains 3 PDFs and 2 DAT files. I have no fucking clue what to do with them because they are just DAT files, which is like, what? A big lump of data. I don't know if I'm supposed to cat them together, just change the names. I have no idea. There is no information about this. It was a download on their page, and you get a zip file with 5 files. 2 of them are useless. They are the game, but I don't know where it is in that game. If anybody has any ideas, I would love to know because I would love to play it again. And I'm sure Wine can do it. I'm sure it can at this point.
Well, you linked to this page, rwine.net, and I saw, right, Jet Set Willy. So I clicked on that, and then it just didn't work. It just falls to icon64.com.
Yeah, this seems to be a new thing where they're selling a few of them for the actual Commodore 64 stuff. So I guess they're trying to keep themselves funded. If you actually hit the Cholo one, it does work. I had tried one of them, which was called Nameless, which was BBC's Exile, which was a you've crashed on a planet sort of thing. It was an awesome thing. It was like really pushing the boundary of the BBC at the time because it was a massive game. But yeah, that does that as well. But the Cholo one actually goes and downloads a zip file, all right. And I went looking for the old downloaded one I must have had in the mid-2000s, but I can't bloody find the thing. I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's very annoying. So close, yet so far.
Well, maybe someone can write in and tell you what to do. Graham, Open Apollo.
Yeah, so I use two audio interfaces actually by a company called Universal Audio. They really only work on Windows and Mac OS, and I would say they're very close to being second to Pro Tools and being an absolute industry standard. You see them everywhere because of their quality and just how functional they are. They all have like a DSP in them, and they have onboard mixing and monitoring. And the 2 devices I use give me over 120 separate inputs that I can control and mix all on the DSP. And of course,
Jesus Christ,
the software is very Windows and Mac OS specific. And I would never have imagined that one day those devices would have Linux drivers. And this is exactly what the Open Apollo project has done. They've said that they've done clean room reverse engineering of what is like, I don't know, it's hundreds of megabytes, the driver on macOS, of the Apollo Thunderbolt audio interface drivers, and then implemented proper Linux kernel drivers for these audio interfaces, including the DSP engine, all the inputs, Pulse Audio support, of course, allowing you to really use all the best features of what is a super high-end, professional quality audio interface on Linux. I must admit, I've not tried it yet, so maybe I'll have to report back on that, but I'm very excited that I'll be able to use these things natively on Linux rather than having to, I use a switch to macOS with all the same setup.
It's the right license, so in theory it could be upstreamed.
If ever you watch any kind of pro audio videos online, I would bet that you would see one of these audio interfaces being used. So it's a really big deal, and it's incredible that it's been reverse engineered in a clean room and then implemented as an open source project.
So what you're saying is that it's almost as good as my Behringer UMC 22.
Well, I mean, Behringer's pretty good.
You don't have to lie to make me feel better, Graham. It's fine. I know it's shit. It's okay.
My mic is plugged into the preamp on one of these devices. They support like 192 kilohertz sampling. The quality is just exceptional, I think, and you can have all of these inputs and all of these outputs and do all the routing on the device without having to touch the computer. So I don't know if this will work, but at least on macOS, when you configure everything and then turn your computer off, leave your audio interface on, you've still got exactly the same configuration to run without running a computer.
Oh, that's quite cool. A stupid question. What would you actually use to control it? Does it have to have its own special software? Or, I mean, it's hardly just like Pulse Audio or whatever.
Yeah, it is Pulse Audio. And I don't know, they say they expose like 52 parameters to ULSA. So I'm assuming, you can manually configure that through the ULSA control utilities, even if there's no GUI. So you can configure something through its API effectively, even if nobody's developed like a mixer application. So I expect you can get to all of this functionality, even if you have to type a command line thing to get it to work.
Well, I've been meaning to talk about this for ages because I've been running Endeavour OS on a ThinkPad for quite a while, and I'm pretty impressed with it, I must say. So for those who don't know, it's basically Arch on very, very easy mode. So I picked the XFCE version, and you get this really nice XFCE, the panel's in the right place. There was very little that I had to do to get it set up how I liked it. But it's very bare bones. It doesn't really come with much software installed, so you have to pretty much install everything you need. And I found myself reading the Arch wiki a lot, like an awful lot. Like even to install what I needed to connect to a Samba share, for example, stuff that's just there in Ubuntu, you have to find out exactly what you need to install and whatnot. And even VLC, you install it, plays everything, right? No. Install VLC, get errors, have to install various libraries and stuff to actually get it to work. So it's quite a learning curve, even though it's quite easy to install in the first place. But it has some real upsides, like Pacman. Graham, you are an Arch user. You will speak to this, right? Pacman is incredibly fast compared to the likes of apt.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's brilliant.
And just the whole thing feels a little bit snappier than an Ubuntu-based system, I would say. But it does sort of require you to know what you're doing. Like I do a Pacman SYU every time I turn it on, and there's fucking updates every single day, several times a day, which you'd expect from Arch. But there's no reboot required, for example. You know, with Ubuntu or Debian, I think it's var/run/reboot required. If there's a file there that says reboot required, then you know I need to reboot. Whereas I looked into it and people were saying on various forums, well, you just know, like if you've got a new kernel, you need to reboot. So there's this sort of level of knowledge that is assumed, I think, which is quite good if you are an experienced Linux user. But I don't think I could recommend this for new people, put it that way.
Did you struggle when you were using the Arch wiki? Did you constantly have to keep saying out loud to yourself that you run Arch?
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Okay, yeah, just saying.
But that wiki is so good. I mean, I've talked about it before. Like, you don't have to even be running Arch for it to be a useful resource. But if you are running Arch, then everything is documented there. It's just a case of finding it, reading it, following the instructions. And it's updated frequently. It's such a great resource. But it's a resource that you very much need, even if you're running Arch on easy mode like I was. I mean, Graham, you probably don't at this point, right? Like, you've been using it so long that you know how to do everything.
I must admit, I've fallen into a bit of a pattern. If something breaks in Arch, I still have to go back to the wiki because mostly it just works until I hit something I don't know. So there was a time when I was reinstalling Arch quite regularly, and then I really knew what was going on and how everything was configured. But now my PC is kind of years since I reinstalled Arch on it, and I just keep it going and keep it updated. So I feel a little bit out of the loop when it comes to state-of-the-art Arch.
That's one of those things, though. Like, you don't want to constantly be reinstalling your distro. That is like sure signs that something has gone terribly wrong. And I think the problem is, you know, your brain can only keep so much. I wouldn't think there's anything wrong with you having to keep going back to the wiki. I think that's a good thing. Like, I mean, how many times do I have to look at what OpenSSL options are because I can't fucking remember which fucking version of the stupid fucking cert this one is this time. Oh, PKC 12 or fucking God knows. Yeah, it's just, you can only keep so much in your head, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with admitting that you have to check the wiki.
Well, I can't even keep tar commands in my head, so, you know.
There's only two.
XVZF, CVZF.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I would say if you want to try Arch, then Endeavour OS is a great way to do it because everything is set up for you. Well, not everything, but you've got a desktop. It looks good. You're not having to worry about that stuff. You're just worried about how you're going to get all the various software that you need.
Did you not say it was XFCE, though?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm really confused now. You said it was looking good and it's XFCE. I don't understand.
Ha 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 ha.
Too easy.
Well, it's not just XFCE. You can pick from that Plasma, GNOME, Mate, Cinnamon, Budgie, LXQ, LXDE, i3. You know, it's not just XFCE. But if you like XFCE like I do, then that is a great option.
Good.
So you could have your plasma if you wanted.
I don't have the mental capacity to take a distro that could kill itself at any moment. I do enough of that myself.
Well, I've been waiting for it to break and it just hasn't. So what can I say? And I've even left it for a couple of weeks at a time without updating it. I go back and I update it. Yeah, there's a shitload to pull down. It takes a little while, but it hasn't broken yet.
Have you aliased your favourite up command to the various incantations of breakage that you want to do?
First thing I did.
Excellent. I love it. What did we learn from last time? Nothing. Carry on.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.